the concentration of aqueous sodium carbonate, we know it's a soluble base, okay, can be found by reaction with HCl of known concentration. The indicator methyl orange is used. So which items of equipment are needed? So what are we trying to do here? We want to figure out the concentration, which means we want to figure out how much of sodium carbonate do we need. And obviously it's aqueous solution, so we'll need it in some burette or something, right? So this is basically titration. Titration is a process that we do to check concentration of an unknown solution. So what do we need in a titration thing? We need an exact amount of acid, and exact volume means that you will need a pipette. We need something to mix acid and base in, so that's conical flask, and we need base to be dropped from something. So that's burette. So there you go, 1C. The diagram shows 3 stages, 1, 2. Acha, by the way, in the last question, if they ask you to find rate of reaction, then what can we do? All the other 3 options, A, B, and D, can be used to figure out the rate of reaction. Why is that? Because, you know, rate of reaction can involve, there's a gas being given off, carbon dioxide, so we can use gas syringe for that. There is thermometer, because it's an exothermic reaction, we can use that. And we just have to add stopwatch to both of them, okay? In fact, we can do it with D, just 1D, because using a pipette and a burette, no, wait, we'll need conical flask or something to mix it with. So we can add base to acid, and you will obviously get some bubbles, and you can simply use stopwatch to see how much bubbles are made, or till when do all the bubbles die out. So some changes in A, B, and D will lead you to something to check the rate of reaction. Anyways, the diagram shows 3 stages, 1, 2, and 3. What's happening here? In the first one, they're dissolving it. In the second one, they're filtering. And the third one, they're evaporating. All right. Which row correctly shows the solubilities both of the reactants and of the salt formed in the process? Okay. So what are they doing? They are basically filtering the evaporating the filtrate, which means that the salt they're trying to get is soluble. So salt is soluble, otherwise they would heat the residue or dry the residue. So salt is soluble. So what does that tell me about the reactants? The reactants are also soluble. There are 4 ways of making soluble salts, and all of them requires most reactants to be soluble. It is possible to have one of them insoluble. So for example, you see that we are using the solid here in the spatula, and that solid, the extra solid, is left over in the residue. So this is a hint for us to know that basically one of the reactant was soluble and the other was insoluble, which is why it was collected as a residue. So yeah, one is soluble, one is insoluble, and the final salt that we're getting is soluble. So yeah, it is D, yes. All right, moving on. The nucleon number between an atom, number of an atom is typically greater than its proton number. The difference between these numbers indicates the number of what in the atom? The number of neutrons in the atom. There is one atom which has the same proton number and neutron number. Which one is that? Hydrogen. Hydrogen has 1 proton number and the same mass number. Why is that? Because it doesn't have any neutrons. That is why it's like that. Anyways, the first one is neutrons, and the second one, atoms that have different nucleon numbers but same proton numbers. Those are isotopes. Now, here's a common mistake that I've seen in some recent papers that I've checked. Students write, when they're defining isotopes, they say atoms with the same proton number but different MR or different AR. Remember, that is not the definition of isotope, because AR is basically relative atomic mass. The idea of relative simply tells me that you're already including all the isotopes. So do not say that atoms have the same proton number and different AR. It's basically the atoms with the same proton number, but different mass number or different nucleon number or different number of neutrons. All right. Which 3 elements exist as diatomic molecules at room temperature? We know that in the periodic table, you see this, there's 8 elements. There's hydrogen, and then there is a continuous inverted L. I'll highlight those for you in case you want to figure this one out. So there must be a periodic table here. Yeah. So in the periodic table, you have hydrogen. That's the one that is, so this is a diatomic one. And then you have these 5 and these 2. So that's an inverted L. that you have in the periodic table, and these are all diatomic, okay, which means that they exist as molecules of 2 atoms joined together. So anything that's from these 8 elements, that's our answer. All right, which is a pure compound? Okay. So ethanol, clearly. Dry air is not a compound, it's a mixture mainly of nitrogen. Steel is carbon, iron, and something else. Petrol, while it may seem that it's a pure compound, it's not. It's a mixture of hydrocarbons which have very close, which are really close to each other in terms of MR and all that, which is why we just use it and burn it. Which diagram best represents the structure of a solid metal? Metal में क्या होता है? There are electrons that are not in definite order, and there are protons or cations that are in definite order. So there must be cations in order, and there must be free electrons. Now, the traditional picture that we have been seeing is C, and students have been drawing that, and that is why they included this MCQ, क्योंकि ये गलत है. The electrons cannot be in the same fixed order. It is going to be B. Okay, because the electrons, you can clearly see that they're not in the same order. Hydrogen sulfide burns in an excess of oxygen according to the equation shown below. 48 dm cube of hydrogen sulfide is burned. 48 dm cube tells me that this thing, it's a gas, right? So we know the volume of this thing, that's 48. Which volume of sulfur dioxide will be formed at room temperature and pressure? So we want to figure out this. Now remember, what is the ratio of volume here? 2 produces 2, right? And in gases, we know that the number of moles is same as the ratio of moles is same as ratio of volume. So if 2 moles produce 2 moles, then 48 dm cube or 48 cm cube will produce 48 dm cube and 48 cm cube, because that's the ratio. All right, which statement about electrical conductivity is correct? अब ये देखें, MCQs में वो हमेशा आपसे concept नहीं confirm कर रहा होता, वो ये भी देख रहा होता है कि आपको shortcuts आते हैं कि नहीं आते. There is a way to get the correct answer through a proper technique, proper working out and all that, and there is a way to get it right away because you know certain facts about it which tell us about your training in the subject. So question number 7 is a clear example of that. यहाँ पे अगर आप moles और stoichiometry वाले method से करेंगे तो time बहुत लग जाएगा. All right, question number 8. Which statement about electrical conductivity is correct? All right, covalent compounds such as glucose conduct. बात ही खत्म. नहीं भाई, नहीं conduct कर सकते. क्यों नहीं कर सकते? Free और charged particles होने चाहिए, या ions होंगे या free electrons होंगे जो move करेंगे. Ions भी या electrons भी, तो वो तो यहाँ पे है ही नहीं. Dilute acids, sure they have ions, such as sulfuric acid conduct because all the ions are free to move. Yeah, that is right. But let's still consider the rest. Ionic compounds such as sodium chloride, okay, they do conduct, we know they conduct because they are free ions, but this one is saying they conduct due to movement of electrons, clearly wrong. Metals such as copper conduct due to movement of positive ions, impossible. Positive ions in the metals do not move, they are fixed in position. Okay, we just saw that in previous question. All right, ammonia is manufactured from nitrogen and hydrogen by Haber process. The equation is this. What is the percentage yield when 60 kg ammonia is produced from 60 kg hydrogen? This is third time I'm seeing this MCQ in the papers. ठीक है, क्योंकि यहाँ पे बच्चे बहुत confused होते हैं, तो वो बार-बार use करते हैं इसको. तो इसको देख लें. What's happening here? We have 60 kg of this. We have the mass of this thing, and mass of this is produced. अच्छा, अब यहाँ पर एक चीज ध्यान में रखें. The product, when you're checking out the percentage yield, you will ignore the product. You will simply use the reactant to figure out the product kitna hona chahiye tha. You will ignore this 60 kg for ammonia. So let me try to figure this out. I have mass of hydrogen and I want to figure out mass of ammonia, right? So let me just use the standard procedures. So what is the mass of 1 mole of hydrogen? 2. Right? So I'm going to say 3 times 2 because 3 is the mole ratio. What is the standard mass of ammonia? 17. 17 times 2, 34. So I'll just write 2 times 17 here because that's the mole ratio for this. Now, if I have 60 of this, how much of this do I get? So if you solve this, you will see that you will get x equal to 340. Again, कुछ ज़्यादा calculator भी ज़रूरत नहीं है. 10 से multiply कर रहे हैं 17 को 170 times 2. आपका 340 kg आ जाना चाहिए. आया कितना? Now we use the product that they've told us. 60 over 340 times 100%, whatever our answer is. You have calculators, you can simply solve it. बट ये सेम में रखें कि yield के क्वेश्चन में the product that we have, we will consider it right at the end. What is the ratio of number of molecules? Number of molecules, okay? In 71 gram gaseous chlorine to the number of molecules in 2 gram gaseous hydrogen. Number of molecules की बात कर रहे हैं तो number of moles is an indication of that. So 71 gram chlorine is 71 over 71, 1 mole. Why? Because MR of chlorine gas, by the way. MR of chlorine is 71. Similarly, 2 of hydrogen, MR of hydrogen, which is again H2, that is 2, so that's 1 mole. So what is the ratio of molecules? Is the same ratio as moles, so 1 to 1. The diagram shows the apparatus for an electrolysis experiment. We are using inert electrodes, could be platinum, could be graphite. Electrolyte, obviously something that does conduct electricity. Using the apparatus shown, which electrode would give colorless gases at both electrodes? आपको colorless gases चाहिए. तो colorless gas कौन सी होगी? हमने जितने भी किए हैं, उसमें colorless gas कब आती है? जब water breakdown करता है. ठीक है? Water का breakdown करता है जब आपके पास dilute acid होता है. बात खत्म. Dilute acid होगा, it will break down water. So it is C. लेकिन वैसे हम देख लेते हैं कि होगा क्या. If I have copper 2 sulfate aqueous, so copper ion, hydrogen ion, sulfate ion, and hydroxide ion. Okay. Copper is less reactive, it will discharge. Hydroxide is less reactive, it will discharge. So I won't get colorless gases on both. I will get oxygen on one. ये oxygen देगा, मुझे नजर आ जाएगा. ये pink copper देगा दूसरे वाला, तो वो भी मुझे नजर आ जाएगा. What happens to the pH in this case? H positive is increasing, OH minus is decreasing, pH will decrease. Because the more H positive you have, the lower the pH. So OH तो use हो रहा है, and so you're left with the H positive. So there is going to be decrease in pH. Concentrated aqueous sodium chloride. Again, aqueous है तो H positive, sodium chloride so sodium positive, chloride negative, and OH negative again. But this time it's concentrated. Because of concentrated thing, hydrogen gas will go over there and chlorine will go over the other one. And you will end up with sodium hydroxide in the solution. This is a very important industrial electrolysis process. This is colorless hydrogen gas. This is green chlorine gas. And what happens to the pH of the solution? You are leaving H positive and you have just OH negative remaining. H positive has left the solution, so you will get a higher pH. So pH is increasing in this case. Molten lead bromide, it's a pure compound, so you'll get lead on one side, which is black solid, and bromine, which is brown gas on the other side, because you have high temperature. So molten lead bromide. So clearly the answer is when you are breaking down water, which is dilute acid. Which metal is most likely to be extracted from its molten chloride? Remember, chloride. By the use of electrolysis. हमें chloride को electrolysis करना है और हमें वो metal चाहिए. अब मेटल चाहिए इसका मतलब है कि वाटर, ठीक है, उसका अगर वहां पर वाटर होगा तो वाटर में या तो वो डिसॉल्व हो जाए, ठीक है, या अगर मैं सिर्फ मोल्टन क्लोराइड अकेले को यूज कर रहा हूं तो मुझे वो चीज चाहिए जो बहुत ज्यादा टेम्परेचर भी ना ले, ठीक है. सो आई थिंक इट्स गोइंग टू बी कॉपर, ठीक है, because I can simply take the electrolysis of this thing. But here's another thing. कॉपर को तो मैं और तरीकों से भी एक्सट्रैक्ट कर सकता हूं. If I have copper chloride, I can simply pass hot hydrogen gas over it और copper is less reactive, steam बनेगी, copper मिल जाएगा मुझे. वो बहुत आसान तरीका है compared to electrolysis one. अच्छा, आयरन क्लोराइड करते हैं. आयरन वाला भी कार्बन के साथ मैं यूज कर सकता हूं. कार्बन कैन एक्ट एज अ रिड्यूसिंग एजेंट और आयरन मिल जाएगा मुझे. Much cheaper than electrolysis. Remember, electrolysis is an expensive process. We avoid it unless we don't have an option. So anything that is very reactive, उसको break down करने का हमारे पास कोई तरीका नहीं है. So clearly, this answer should be calcium. Silver, iron, and copper can all be extracted through cheaper methods. So that is why the most likely one is electrolysis for calcium, because calcium is very reactive. All right. Two energy profile diagrams are shown. We can see that both of them are endothermic. Why are they endothermic? Because this one has a small delta H, this one has a high delta H, but both of them are rising up. They're both positive. They're both endothermic. Secondly, the activation energy तो सबकी आपको पता है positive होता है. इसकी एक्टिवेशन एनर्जी थोड़ी ज्यादा है, उसकी एक्टिवेशन एनर्जी थोड़ी कम लग रही है. Provided this is to scale. Which statement is correct? Both reactions are exothermic. गलत. Only one reaction is exothermic. ये भी गलत. Activation energy of reaction 1 is smaller than that of activation energy of 2. नहीं, गलत बात है, क्योंकि we can clearly see that reaction 1 has a higher hump than the reaction number 2. So clearly, D is the right answer. All right. Ammonium nitrate dissolves in water. Obviously, all ammonium salts are soluble. We know SNAP. You add it to water, you get water, the nitrate solution, and delta H is positive. Okay. So which statements are correct? The reaction is endothermic. Yes, it is endothermic. हमें इसको stir करना पड़ेगा, थोड़ी activation energy देनी पड़ेगी. Hot water में जल्दी dissolve होगा because it will get that extra energy from water. The water gets colder. Obviously, water is losing energy. That energy is being taken up by the process. So temperature falls. It's an endothermic reaction. Temperature falls. Heat energy is absorbed by the ammonium nitrate from the water. Yeah, that is again right. So 1, 2, and 3, all three of them correct. All right, 15. Which statement about photosynthesis is correct? Chlorophyll is a reactant. Reactant is the one thing that actually reacts, that actually is used up in the process. So chlorophyll is not used up. We don't see plants going out to shop for chlorophyll every day. They just have that chlorophyll in them, or वो reuse होता रहता है because it is a catalyst. Oxygen is a product. Okay, so when photosynthesis happens, oxygen is given out. So yeah, this is a product. Yes. Sunlight is a reactant. नहीं, sunlight को use करके वो energy absorb कर लेता है. It's not matter. Reactants are always matter. Products are always matter. Sunlight is not matter. Sunlight is light, energy. Water is a product. No, water is a reactant. They absorb water from their roots, from the environment. I don't know exactly water कौन से वाला use करते हैं वो. Like the water that we spray on them or the water that they get from the roots. I don't know. Does anybody know bio? All right. Next, in which reaction is the underlying substance reduced? Okay, so what is being reduced? Let's see. Zinc is oxidized, magnesium is oxidized, chlorine is reduced because chlorine goes from 0 to -1. This is reduced. Carbon is oxidized again because carbon is getting oxygen. So yeah. Catalysts alter the rate of chemical reaction. Which statements correctly describes the effect of adding catalyst? Simply, catalyst lowers the activation energy because it provides a different pathway. Okay, so now more particles have enough energy to react. So 2 and 3 are correct. First one is wrong because saying that reactant particles have more energy. उनको energy ज़्यादा नहीं मिलेगी. Requirement of energy कम हो गई है बस. Solution T has the following properties. It reacts with magnesium forming a gas. Okay, so there is some solution T which reacts with magnesium forming a gas. Where have we seen this? We have seen this when solutions of acids react with metals. Okay, it reacts with calcium carbonate forming a gas. Where have we seen that? Acids react with carbonates to give carbon dioxide gas. Okay, so both of those are characteristics of acids. So let's see. It contains more OH minus sign than H positive. नहीं. H positive ज़्यादा होगा तो acid होगा, otherwise तो नहीं होगा. It has pH 9 again. That is something about basic solutions. That's not the case here. It reacts with calcium carbonate to produce hydrogen. Oh God, this can't be right. It reacts with aqueous ammonia. Yeah, ammonia is base, so it does react with it. So this is our answer. Which substance is soluble in water? Something that you have to memorize. No concept involved. We know that SNAP salts are soluble. In the case of carbonates, they're insoluble. In the case of phosphates, they're insoluble. In the case of oxides, they're insoluble. Okay, so for copper, what is going to be soluble? SNAP. Copper nitrate is soluble. Copper 2 nitrate, in fact. All right. Which statement about ammonia is correct? It is colorless and odorless. Colorless होता है, odorless नहीं होता. It has a very, क्या कहते हैं, pungent smell. It is a gas that turns damp blue litmus red. It's actually the opposite because it's basic alkaline gas. It is formed when potassium nitrate is heated with sodium hydroxide and aluminum. Yeah, why not? Because nitrate का test क्या होता है? You add aluminum foil, you heat it in an alkaline solution, and it will give ammonia gas. Okay, So that is clearly C. और वो असल में अब देखो टेस्ट क्या कर रहे हैं? It is testing two things. Number one, the characteristics of ammonia being an alkaline gas, and second, testing if you know the test for nitrate ion. All right. Part of the periodic table, we are done with half the paper. Good. Part of the periodic table is shown with 4 elements. These are not the elements' actual symbols. Okay. Some parts of these elements may react to form compounds. You can see that this is group 2, that is group 7. So I'll just write it there. Group 2, group 7, group 6, group 3, just so I know. Which formula are correct? WX. Nope. That's not possible because W is a metal, X is also likely to be a metal. So that's not going to be there. WY2, let's see. So yeah, WY2 is possible because W will have positive 2, Y will have negative 1. WY2 is possible very much. WZ. WZ is also possible because W is plus 2 and Z is minus 2. So it's going to form WZ. That is possible, yeah. But just to check, WZ is possible. XZ is not possible because X is plus 3, Z is minus 2. Formula ये नहीं होगा, ratio ये नहीं होगी. X2Z3 possible है. YZ. YZ. No, not possible. YZ is not possible. We will need 2Y to react with 1Z. All right. The elements in group 1 have similar chemical properties. Which statement explains why this is true? Okay. It could be for any group and it will still have the same answer. They all have the same number of complete electron shells. No, they have the same number of electrons in the outer shell. That is what determines the chemical properties of anything. And groups are no exception. All right, helium and xenon are both noble gases. What is true about both elements? They're chemically inert. Yes, they're both chemically inert. They're noble gases. The atoms have 8 electrons in the lost shell. That's actually not true. It's easy to overview it's easy to just ignore this because you're like, oh, noble gases. But you see, helium has 2 in the last shell and xenon will have 8. So clearly this one's wrong. So they're chemically inert, yes, no. So that is B. The ions of metal X react with aqueous potassium iodide. All right. From this information, it can be deduced that X is most likely a group 2 metal. But then you see that it is colored. So it's more likely a transition metal. And the X2 positive is ions are from here to here. What's happening? Iodide has negative 1. X has positive 2. But over here, X has positive 1. So they are being reduced. So it is colored, so it must be transition metal. But the charge is going down, so it is clearly reduced. For those of you interested, iodine here is acting as both reducing as an, okay, it's being reduced as well as it's retaining its position. So we say it is a disproportionation reaction. Okay, disproportionation, because some iodide ions are becoming iodine after being oxidized. Sorry, and some iodide ions are not taking part in that reaction. All right, which substance is a metal? High melting point, yes. Conducts like cerebral solid, yes. And that leaves us with just C. We don't even have to look at the third one. Which metal can be obtained from its oxide by either carbon or hydrogen? इसका मतलब है कि that thing is below carbon and that thing is below hydrogen in the reactivity series. So there's only one option here, copper. Metal carbonates decompose when heated. Yes, they do. They give carbon dioxide. Which carbonate is most stable to heat? Obviously, the one that is made by something that is very reactive. जितना ज़्यादा reactive होगा, उतना difficult होगा उसको break down करना. So in this case, calcium carbonate is the winner. Because calcium is the most reactive of these. Iron is extracted from its ore in a blast furnace. Coke and limestone are also added. Coke is carbon, limestone is calcium carbonate. What is the purpose of all of them? Let's see. Calcium carbonate breaks down, gives calcium oxide, which reacts with impurities. which are acids, and calcium oxide is basic. Then carbon dioxide is then further reduced and makes carbon monoxide, which is a very good reducing agent. Okay, and that is how iron is extracted. So coke is also burned to produce carbon dioxide, which is then used to produce carbon monoxide, or coke itself can act as a reducing agent. All right, what is the purpose of limestone? Obviously to take care of the impurities, and that is C. Aluminium is extracted from aluminum oxide by electrolysis. इसको याद रखना है, इसमें क्या होता था, इसमें हमारे पास मल्टीपल एनोड्स होते थे कार्बन के जो बर्न कर जाते थे बिकॉज ऑक्सीजन आता था, and then we have molten aluminium which is going to go off. We will need to replace anodes. We also add cryolite because we want to reduce the melting point of this thing. So which statement about this electrolysis is correct? Aluminium ions, which are Al3 plus, by the way, gain electrons to form aluminium. Obviously they do. How do you get this? You add 3 electrons. So yeah, this is true. Cryolite increases the melting point. Wrong. Cryolite reacts. No. Carbon cathode has to be replaced. Carbon anode is the one that has to be replaced. This one, not the cathode one. उसने label भी किया हुआ है. All right. Steel is produced by blowing oxygen into impure molten iron. Okay. All right. So why does this happen? What do we want? We want steel, and steel कहाँ से बनेगा? Steel हमारा produce होगा जब हमारे पास carbon or iron, or maybe if we want to add something else, तो carbon और iron दोनों होने चाहिए हमारे पास. ठीक है? तो वो तो है, impure iron है. तो अब यहाँ पर क्या ऑप्शन उसके वाली को हम कंसीडर करना चाहिए? Any ideas about this? देखते हैं. वो कहते हैं oxygen removes some of the carbon from the impure iron. Yeah, because we want to make sure that we have a certain percentage of carbon in it. And the second one says the oxygen oxidizes iron to ions. Nahi bhai, it doesn't oxidize. Even if it does, we don't care about it. Actually, it doesn't paise. So this is only one is true, 2 is not. All right. Z is a pollutant gas formed in internal combustion engine. कौन सी प्रोड्यूस होती थी? कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड प्रोड्यूस होती थी, कार्बन मोनोऑक्साइड होती थी, नाइट्रोजन मोनोऑक्साइड होती थी, नाइट्रोजन डाइऑक्साइड होती थी. ये 4 तो जरूर होती थी. An aqueous solution of Z is acidic. So this is not it. This is not it. Z is removed from the exhaust gases in a catalytic converter by reduction. That means removing its oxygen. So that's this one. Nitrogen dioxide. A student investigates the properties of a colorless organic liquid. Okay. Which observation shows that it is unsaturated? Saturation का test क्या होता था? Unsaturated मतलब double bonds or triple bonds. So decolorizes aqueous bromine. Yes, because it undergoes addition reaction. Sweet smell. Esters हो सकते हैं. This doesn't tell me that it's unsaturated. Good solvent doesn't tell me anything about it. Maybe the intermolecular forces are similar, but who cares? It produces carbon dioxide when burnt. Bhai, हर organic compound produces carbon dioxide when burnt. Alkanes are saturated compounds. That means they have single bonds, carbon-carbon single bonds, and carbon and hydrogen only hydrocarbons. Structure 1, 2, 3, and 4 are saturated hydrocarbons, which are isomers. Isomers के लिए हमें देखना है कि कहाँ पर हमारे पास long chain में कितने हैं. So इसको देखते हैं. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the long chain, 1 in the branch. 5 in the long chain, 1 in the branch, but here's the thing. Here, the branch is on the second carbon. Here, the branch is on the third carbon. Okay. This one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 carbons, but the number of hydrogen over here, this is 6, C6H14. This is also C6H14. This is C6H12. Let's look at this one. This one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the long chain and 2 in the branches. So 1 and 2 are isomers because they have different structures. In one of them, there's a branch on the second one, and the other, the branch is on the third one. And they have the same molecular formula, C6H14. So that is clearly our answer. When butene reacts with bromine, which compounds could be made? Acha, isme ab aapne, we have talked about it in detail earlier on as well. Remember that when addition reaction happens, bromine or whatever thing is added to adjacent carbons. Both the carbons involved get something. In substitution, the same carbon gets something. Okay. So in A can only be formed through substitution. क्योंकि आपने ये वाला हाइड्रोजन चेंज कर दिया, फिर ये वाला हाइड्रोजन चेंज कर दिया उसी कार्बन का. So ये substitution हुआ होगा. This one, it is possible to do it through substitution. क्या पहले इस कार्बन का हाइड्रोजन चेंज कर दें, फिर उस हाइड्रोजन चेंज कर दें. But it is also possible to do it through addition. क्योंकि let's suppose यहाँ पे double bond था, so the double bond broke and new bromine has been added on adjacent carbon. So this is our answer. Let's consider these. It's not possible to do this one through addition because these carbons are not connected through any bond. Double bond तो फिर दूर की बात है. And same for this one. दूर दूर है. Substitution हुआ होगा. So all four are possible through substitution, but B is also possible through addition. All right. Which statement about propene is correct? Propene क्या थी? Unsaturated alkene, CnH2n. It can be formed by cracking butane. Yeah, we can break large compounds and form smaller hydrocarbons. So that is cracking. We use catalyst for doing that. So yeah, it is possible. It has formula C3H8. That's actually propane, not propene, because propene is CnH2n. It is saturated hydrocarbon. Nahin, double bond hai, unsaturated hai. It reacts with hydrogen to form ethane. Hydrogen से react करना है, carbon atoms तो नहीं कम हो जाएंगे ना. So this is, it will form propane, not ethane. Which term describes the structure of pterylene? Pterylene क्या होता था? Pterylene is the artificial thing that has the same linkage as fat. So it's polyester. Which process is involved in the formation of ethanol from ethene? Ethene is unsaturated, and you are adding water to get ethanol. Remember this thing. You add water at high temperature with a catalyst, phosphoric acid catalyst, to make alcohols. So this is addition reaction, hydrolysis reaction. So this is A. Which compound is alcohol? Anything with OH in it. अब इसको देखते हैं जरा. हमारे पास OH है, यहाँ पे है, यहाँ पे है. This is a diol, clearly an alcohol. This thing has ether in it. So this is an ether, not alcohol. This thing has COOH in it. This is acid. And this thing is a ketone, which is beyond O-level syllabus. So the answer is B. It's a diol. Which two compounds react to form this whole thing? अब इसको देख के परेशान नहीं होना. You have to look at the linkage that is in them. Ester linkage है. तो मैं जरा इस linkage को तोड़ देता हूँ. मैं यहाँ पर इसको एक साइड पे ऐसे छोड़ देता हूँ और दूसरी साइड पे इसको ऐसे छोड़ देता हूँ. So when I add water, I get this thing, which is methanol, and this thing, which is propanoic acid. So methanol, propanoic acid. Which compound might be suitable to flavor a soft drink? Any ester would be good. Remember, this is for flavoring it, not to make it fizzy. Okay, you are going to add some flavors. So flavor कहाँ से आता है? Ester से. तो ester ये है. ये alcohol है, नहीं suitable. ये carboxylic acid है, नहीं suitable. और ये तो एक simple alkene है, इसका तो कोई फायदा नहीं. All right. So if you're trying to flavor soaps, trying to flavor detergent, trying to flavor shampoos, anything, that is ester is the way to go. All right. So we've done this paper.